Namaste. This is Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to relay the new moon forecast that we have coming up here. Today is the 9th of February, and our new moon is on the 11th, and the moon just moved into Capricorn today and joined this massive stellium of planets. So I know that you're feeling it. I certainly am. The difference from just yesterday to today was like wake up and all the pressure, all the stress, all the things that need to be done. And I think that one of the things that we really need to be aware of in this moment is where Capricorn is in our chart, because it can really, light up a specific area of your life right now. We have the moon and sun coming together in the very final degrees of Capricorn. I'm actually just going to go ahead and share the screen right now just so you guys can see what I'm referring to. So you see this cluster of all the planets, pretty much all the planets except for Mars. And then of course we have Neptune and Uranus. I don't normally use the outer planets, but right now I am because Pluto is here and Uranus has joined Mars. So if you do use the outer planets, it's like they're even in these two spots except for Neptune. So we're in a situation where all the energy is being really concentrated in one place. And that's profound. I mean, it has a very strong effect on our life. And whatever area of life this is for you, whatever house this is for you, that is just getting, I mean, on one hand, it's getting hammered, it's just like there's just so many different energies there. But, it also can mean that the focus is there. So there's two different, ways of looking at stellium of planets. When you see a lot of planets in one place, it means that there's a lot of focus there. There's a lot of energy. Generally speaking, it means things get done. When we have our energy more spread out and more scattered, we might have, a better time socially. We might feel better. It might, it's probably more balanced to be able to, it's not probably, it's definitely more balanced to have your energy in different elements and different signs and different houses. That means you give attention to all the different areas of your life. And generally that would make somebody a happier person. Having all your energy in one place means that that's where everything is going all the time. And you're very one-minded, very one singular focus. So people who have these kind of stelliums in their chart generally have some serious struggle with the regular, normal things in life, but are very focused in one area and really are able to get something done, especially if it's in an area like their career or something like that, where they can really, make a difference in the world. For us as a transit, it can be particularly intense because, you don't normally have this energy there. This isn't your normal thing. So you're being totally swept into one place and all the focus is there. And it's not, we're not being swept into a place where things are particularly pleasant. We're being swept into the area of responsibilities and duty and pressure and time and this awareness of our aging and this awareness of the fact that we are, our bodies are breakable and can, serve us or not serve us. And that all that work we've been doing all of our lives is to kind of keep us alive. It's to survive. It's not necessarily done in service of happiness or in service of high spirituality. There's a lot of things we sacrifice at the altar of necessity. And in our current world, we've moved the bar of what's necessary to a pretty far place. If you think about Thoreau or somebody who really focused on minimalism and how we could live on very little, this would be the ultimate Capricornian dream, would be to just, only need a shelter and the food that you're going to eat, you could harvest off of the trees or out of the forest. And you would do, the minimal amount of work for survival. And then you could focus your energy on, allowing yourself to free yourself from all these responsibilities so that you're not feeling so much pressure from the outside world, but rather you're using the essence of time in a way to expand it. And that's really what meditation does, is it expands time. If you've ever had a practice of meditating and you practice it in the morning, you find actually your whole day has more time in it because everything just lines up. Everything happens in a flow. Whereas when we're coming from this sort of pressured experience, we, which maybe you felt today. I certainly did. Like it really hit me from yesterday to today. Yesterday I was productive. Today I woke up and felt a very strong sense of that pressure and almost anxiety from the moon having moved in with all these planets. So it's not just being in Capricorn. The moon at this moment, I can show you, as I film this, it's February 9th. The moon is in the very early part of Capricorn, and the sun is all the way here. So we still have a couple days till our new moon. But look, I mean, it's gonna, right now it just passed over Pluto. It's gonna be joining Saturn, then it's gonna join Venus, and it's gonna join Jupiter, and then it's gonna join Mercury, then it's gonna join the sun. So it's getting all these different energy hits too as it passes through the sky. We're experiencing not just it being in the sign of Capricorn, but we're also experiencing it in conjunction with each of these planets. And the moon is our most sensitive, most vulnerable self that really is kind of looking to latch on to whatever's around it. So as we roil around with our emotions and this, this sensitive part of ourselves, it's being, hit by each of these different energies, reminding it maybe in some ways, like when it's joined Saturn, that can really bring up the pressure. But because Saturn is in his own sign and there's a lot of intelligence here, it can also bring up that part of us that understands we need to surrender, and that understands we need to meditate, or that we might need some space and we might need to be alone. When we do the work, when we actually do the things that are in front of us to do, that helps to satisfy that part of us that feels anxious or that feels pressure, because we're working in some direction. It's why people write lists, so you can check things off and say, okay, I did that. Okay, I did that. Okay, I did that. I'm being responsible. So as the moon meets Saturn, that can be part of our experience. And then as we meet Venus, it can be a little bit different. Like, maybe not wanting to feel all the pressure and responsibility, maybe feeling a little bit more in tune with what we wanted to do to make us happy. How come we're not feeling more happiness? Well, maybe our relationships come up, maybe our sense of pleasure. Maybe we're thinking about Valentine's Day, which is just a few days after the new moon. And then with Jupiter, it's the hopefulness, it's the optimism, it's the expansion, and it's our faith and our beliefs in things. And of course, Jupiter in Capricorn isn't that expansive or hopeful, but Jupiter's also being affected by all these different energies around. And so, it's still that part of us that feels beliefs, inspiration, and ideals, whether or not they are more constricted or not. There's still going to be that feeling as we pass through it. And then, of course, as it joins Mercury retrograde, we might be feeling some of the retrograde aspects there of our missed communication, our delayed communication, the things we didn't say, or the things we did say but they came out wrong, or the texts that didn't get sent, or the emails that didn't happen, or whatever tech problems we're having. All of these different things are going to come up for us as we move towards this new moon. And I'm going to move it back to the actual new moon on the 11th, where the sun and the moon are at 29 degrees Danista. And if you've been with me here for a while, then you know that all of our new moons have been in this 29 degree range for the last, really since Virgo. Virgo, we had 2 new moons, and we had one at 0 degrees and one at 29 degrees. And so this is really indicative of a lack of presence with the cycle anyway. The cycle that's starting off is we're not as present with it. And, even if you didn't understand that principle of it being, we call it either bala, like childlike, or mritya, like it's dead, when it's at the beginning or end of a sign. And it changes for the masculine and feminine signs. So for each month, it's been different, whether it's been Mritya or Bala. But it's, just seeing that it's going to move out right away, that we're starting a cycle where immediately everything's starting to move out of that placement, can show the lack of presence we have with that. We've been in a Capricorn cycle for the last month, we've had the sun here, and this has been our energy of pressure, of shining the light on what our responsibilities are, what our duties are, how much time we have, if we need to, what we need to do to survive, what we need to do to secure our future. And so setting off the cycle at the very end of it can feel anticlimactic, actually. And it can be sort of a lack of presence with that. Like, did the cycle ever begin? Did it end? It's very much more nebulous than it might be if the new moon started in earlier degrees in the sign. So that's just something to sort of be aware of. And not just the sun has been there, right? Of course, Mercury just traveled all the way through Capricorn, took a few steps into Aquarius, and then went retrograde and moved right back into Capricorn again. Venus just moved in right before the full moon we had a couple weeks ago. But Jupiter and Saturn, Saturn's been here since January 2020, and Jupiter has been here since November of 2020. So we've had, and Pluto, the final planet that I have here, moved in at the beginning of this year. So we've had this concentration of energy here in one way or another since January of last year, because when Saturn makes transit, it's a big deal because Saturn is there for 2.5 years. It's a very strong, big hold on us every time Saturn makes a transit somewhere. So we've been in that Capricornian cycle just vis-a-vis Saturn since January of 2020. And it's been that, we could see it was the end of January, and immediately after that, the pandemic broke out worldwide. It was already festering abroad. And by March, it was lockdown in the US. Everyone stay home, stay alone. This is very Saturn and Capricorn kind of quality where you have to be isolated, you have to be alone, everybody's sick, everybody's dying, let's be of fear. There's a lot of elements to this that we've experienced in 2020 that are Saturn and Capricorn. Now, again, it's actually in good dignity. It's in its own sign. So we have a lot we can learn through this. If we're tuning in and if we're aware, we can let go of a lot of things in a Saturn cycle. The pressure, the responsibility, the sense of time, all those things add up and pile onto us. And then we have this break where it's like, okay, well, there's only so much you can do, right? Because your body might actually physically break. You might actually be aging or feel like you're aging, even if you're in your 20s. And there's a capacity that you have physically. And when you pass it, you can't do anymore. There's nothing you can do. It's like you have to stop. There's only so much we can get done. And so that part of us starts to release and feel a sense of freedom, actually, as we embrace and accept our limitations, as we embrace and accept setting boundaries around things so that we can't, we don't have time for everything. We can't say yes to everything. So we start to say no. That frees us. So the more we tap into the part of freedom from it, rather than, just more and more and more responsibility, the wiser we become. And the more we are starting to understand the true nature of time. And like I said earlier, expand time, actually make time work for you rather than be something that you're constantly running against. Which is a concept we're basically raised with in society, is this idea that there's this limited amount of time and you have to get all these things done in that amount of time through competitions, through deadlines and all these different things. Time is the big marker, the big thing that's always ticking and always reminding us of what we do and don't have time for. So what are we committing to? What are you spending your time on? What are you focusing on? And is it worthy of your time? That's one of the big things that comes up, what you're actually rolling up your sleeves and working for. And is it a vision that will sustain you for the long haul? Is it something that is, if it's temporary, if it's fleeting in both form of pleasure or even in survival, then you're not going to feel very secure. You're not going to be able to find freedom beyond time if you're constantly having to find, a new place to live, for example, or a new way of making money or a new way of handling your responsibilities. That puts you in a constant state of fear, stress, anxiety, and tension, and you'll never be able to move beyond time. It's why they show that, poverty has these effects on people, because when people are forced to live in a state of impoverishment, when they don't know when their next meal is coming from, when they don't have those secured long-term things laid out for them, the stress makes their brain actually lateralize, and they're unable to function with their full capacity. So it's important to take care of our responsibilities. And that's really what we've been learning, and what's really important about taking care of our responsibilities is taking care of our responsibilities. This seems to be the number one problem we have in today's world. And it's because we see the world through social media so much, where people probably go do a million things all day long, right? They're taking care of all the stuff, and then they decide to spout off on social media about one incident they had, or one idea they have, or somebody's post triggers them and they have to comment and they can't stop themselves. That, I think, raises it and makes it feel even more as though we're constantly trying to discipline and, sort of humble everyone else. And this is a big issue with Saturn and with Mars, is that Saturn and Mars are the two really harshest malefics. The sun is considered a malefic because it burns and it shines a lot of bright light on things that we don't, it's not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. And the concept of malefic and benefic is whether or not it feels good. The malefic planets bring us closer to our truth. They bring us closer to our dharma more times than not, whereas the benefic planets might not do that. They might make everything so easeful and feel good that we don't pressure ourselves. We don't move ourselves beyond. But planets like Saturn that put that heavy pressure on us, that's how we get things done. If we didn't have pressure on us, we might not do anything. If you had unlimited time and you didn't have to worry about anything, and you had unlimited roofs over your head and unlimited food and money or whatever it was you needed to survive, you might not work. You might not work that hard. It wouldn't be, unless you had yourself a huge stellium of planets somewhere and felt so strongly compelled to do one thing, there's a good chance that you would not get a lot done. You wouldn't achieve much, and you probably wouldn't produce something that would help society or be a contribution to society if you really didn't have to. And we don't need to look that far to see that. There's plenty of people who are raised with a ton of money, in families that are just, every generation just has more and more wealth. And we see that a lot of the people, being raised in those families are just sort of given their job or given their title or whatever, but they don't work for it. They just kind of do the bare minimum or whatever they have to do, and their pressure and their responsibilities really comes more from the parents or whoever's funding them and proving that they are, whatever they have to prove to show that they are worthy of their money or whoever they have to marry or whatever it is they have to do in order to meet their family's needs. But ultimately they don't spend a lot of energy trying to make something great for the world and all of this. And of course that's a generalization. There's plenty of people who probably have, but again, they probably have a stellium of planets somewhere or some very focused energy that's really driving them to do something specific. Or to revolt against their family heritage or something like that. But more often than not, the regular folks of this world work because they have to. And right now, more than ever, we really feel that have to. But what I was starting to say and sort of got sidetracked there with the Saturn and Mars is that we have a tendency to first want to put those energies on other people. So with Mars, it's really about discipline, right? Courage and discipline. So we tell other people to man up, or be courageous. And we, even with children or whatever, we discipline. We have this idea that discipline is like telling someone they've done something wrong and maybe even getting angry in that process. When in truth, discipline comes from a principle of disciple, of teaching, of showing by example. And with Mars, really more than anything, it's repetitive action that we want to show up for. That's actually why I'm going to talk about Dhanista in a minute. The nakshatra this new moon is in, it's the steady sound. And it's indicated by the drum, Lord Shiva's drum. It said to meet out our epochs of time. And this steady rhythm, this steady beat is where Mars is exalted. And the reason is because That's what we need to have, is daily discipline. Discipline is something you do to yourself. You get up every day, you do your yoga practice, you practice your instrument if you're a musician, you surf every day if you're a surfer, you do your thing, you show up. And you do it again and again and again and again. So on the day when you don't feel like doing it at all and all the energy is all over the place and you're feeling lazy, you are still doing it even though you don't want to. Or you can take a day off and it doesn't completely throw you off your routine forever. I'm a yoga teacher, and I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody say, oh, I didn't come to class 1 week, and then before you know it, they haven't come to class for 6 weeks. And then maybe it turns into 6 months and then they haven't done yoga. And so that idea of showing up all the time, no matter what, is so that you can carry through the times that are harder, and so that it's just ingrained in you. It's just something that you're doing all the time. So that's really how we're supposed to use our discipline, is on us. And likewise with Saturn energy, it's that pressure, it's the hard work, it's the humility, the willingness to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work and not just be lording over everyone else doing the work. It's the humility to realize that you do have a limit, that you do have limits, that you do have body limits, literally, like your body will break at a certain point, or you're aging and you can only do so much. You might not be able to do as much as you used to be able to do. It's recognizing your limits, it's setting boundaries with others, and it's committing to stuff that actually serves your long-term goals. That's what you're, and the highest level of using that Saturn energy is to really sit in that silence and solitude and find peace in it. And, of course, you can get there through meditation. And the highest energy of Mars is to fight the battles that are worth fighting, that are really aligned. So when we're using these things on other people and we're telling them they're fighting the wrong battles, or they're not being disciplined enough, or they're not being humble enough, or they're not rolling up their sleeves in the direction that we want them to run in, they're not committing to what we committed to, they're not scared of what we're scared of, when we start dictating this to everyone else, then we lose it. We lose the power of those planets and we become little, authoritarian dictators, which is what's really happened right now. I mean, you see it. It's funny how much people kind of do that in social media. It's very obvious, they say something like, how dare you do this, that, the other thing, whatever, they spout off about whatever they're spouting off about. And it's so obvious that they're actually taking on that authoritarian role themselves, but they feel justified in it. They feel like it's fair. It's okay. They can do that because they're right. Without recognizing the irony of the fact that they're not taking their own advice. So I think, and I say they, and it's like, well, I've done that, I'm sure. And so has everyone else. It's very easy to see when we live in this world of social media and people are displaying their emotions, and that those things maybe they would have just said in their own head, or they would have said to nobody in the room, or to their cat, to their dog, to their best friend, to their husband, their wife. Maybe you would have just said it like that before, but now we have social media. So you can get on and start, making a post about it and making everybody else feel that you felt that thing in that moment. So it's really a bunch of emotions displaying themselves as virtue or ethics or principles or ideals or all these other things. But really it's our fear and our anger that's coming out, and we're using it against other people as opposed to in service of us reaching our closer to our own truth. So this is really what we're trying to learn right now. These are the big lessons, and they're very possible. Mars is in his own sign, Saturn's in his own sign. This is when the intelligence kicks in. This is when you get humbled. You do something like that and you get humbled, you get brought down to size. This is when you find that strength, that courage to face things that you might not otherwise want to face, or to do the daily discipline you need to do to show up and do what you need to do for you and your truth and your path. That's really what power we have available to us right now. But does it feel good? Probably not. It really probably doesn't feel very good. Personally, I really felt a very strong shift from the moon moving from here to here. Just last night, the moon was in Sagittarius and now it's joined the stellium of planets. And I felt an immediate shift in energy to one that was a bit more anxious and a bit more like, okay, now we got to get somewhere. We got to do these things. These are all the things I have to do on my list, whereas yesterday I actually got quite a lot done, but it wasn't as high pressure. And what's really powerful to understand about the moon, especially just being with all of these planets, all this energy. And of course, right now the moon is again only at 2 degrees. So it hasn't even moved in yet. It hasn't even passed through the levels of meeting all these different planets. But the feeling of it, the moon is what we feel. It's our psyche, it's our emotions, it's our sense of it. So the moon is like, because Capricorn is actually a very lovely place for me. I'm a Taurus rising. It's my 9th house of faith and beliefs and teaching and counseling. And I love teaching and I love sharing this wisdom. So usually when the moon's in Capricorn, I actually feel quite good. My ruling planet is there. So it'll travel over my natal Venus. And I usually really feel quite nice with the moon in Capricorn. But because of all these other planets there, it is really what's amping up the energy and making it so strong. And we can see a lot of these planets are in Shravana. The moon is, of course, in Uttarashada with Pluto right now. At the moment, like I said, it was, I'm doing this on the 9th on Tuesday. So the moon is still in Uttarashada, where we're still sort of reaping the rewards, if you will, harvest of what we've planted in the previous sign, in the previous star in Purvashada. So, if we had positive discernment and we were able to kind of sift through what was and what was not worth planting and worth working towards, then we might be feeling the emotional benefit of that, of what work we've already put in. But as it starts to move into Capricorn, we also start to really get out of the realm of beliefs and ideals and really into the concretization. Like, what are we making, what's practical? Because it's an earth sign and we want to do something. We want to make something happen. And it's why Mars is so positive here, is that Mars wants to act. And so when there's a clear channel, a clear path of where you're going, that energy really exalts. It's at its highest placement. The moon is a little bit more wishy-washy, right? The moon isn't so action oriented. It's our emotions, it's our state of mind. So it really can just feel like a lot of pressure for us. Without a capacity to act as much. But since there is all these planets here, your inner self is integrating with all of these other parts of yourself. And of course, each of these planets have their own energy, which I sort of went through when I said how it's going to feel when the moon meets each of these things. But for each of us, they rule different houses. Like I said, I am a Taurus. So the moon is my 3rd house. It's my nature of willfulness. It's the part of me that wants to learn new things and move outside of the paradigm that I was raised in. It's the part of me that's growing in an almost painful manner, because it's that part that thinks I'm the doer. It's my ego. It's the part that thinks I'm the one doing, as opposed to the 9th house, where I realize I'm a channel and it's happening through me. So it can be frustrating. And for somebody else, the moon is, for Gemini, the moon is their values. It's their sense of values. For, a Pisces, it's their 5th house of creativity. So for each of us, it's bringing up a different area of our life into the arena of Capricorn, which of course is the one getting hit the most. So this is, one of the most important things to understand is just what is your lagna? What is your rising sign? What is your ascendant? And where is all this happening in your life? Because it's a specific area of your life. If I was a Cancer rising, this would all be in my 7th house. I would be very focused on partners and partnerships right now. And that would be the main area of my life that would be hit up, would be all my relationships with people, and maybe not even just my one romantic partner, but all the different people in my life. That would be really what was focused, but that's not the case for me. So it is really important to understand where these planets are, and then even deeper, to understand what they rule, what each of these planets rule. And since it's almost all the planets, it's going to be most of the areas of your life that are going to be in this one arena. But the moon in Uttarashada, then it's going to move into Shravana, right? So we have Jupiter, Venus, Saturn are all in Shravana. And this is where we're listening. We're trying to listen deeper. It's a very spiritual nakshatra. It's ruled by Vishnu. And we're trying to hear things beneath the surface or between the sounds. We're not just listening for what's obvious. We're listening for what's beneath the surface. So this is a powerful time with those 3 planets, especially because Saturn and Jupiter are the longer the ones that stay there for longer, we're really learning that. And Mercury is moving into that place, retrograde, where it's going to meet Jupiter and Saturn in Shravana. So Mercury being, of course, our communication and our capacity to even hear at all, which really actually ramps up when it's retrograde. We're more able to hear because we're doing less talking. So there's and I actually just did a post on that with Mercury retrograde, when it went retrograde, on how it's doing in Dhanista and then what's happening when it moves into Shravana. And it's really that reversal process, because the planets and the stars move in a progression. But when a planet is retrograde or with the nodes and they're moving backwards, we're experiencing the rewind of that karma. We're experiencing a do-over, especially with the retrograde planets. So we've already been here. We've already had Mercury in Dhanista. We've already had it in Shravana. And now we're doing it again because we missed something the first time around. So these, these three right now, but Mercury will be here soon. This Shravana collection, the moon will be moving through, and we can have some very profound spiritual insight. It's a great time for mantra, for, really all of the Capricorn. I find the anxiety can be really quelled when we listen to chanting, because it's this repetitive sound, and these chants, especially like the Sanskrit chants, are mathematically attuned sounds. These aren't just words that mean something. Oftentimes in the English language, we have mantras that are sort of empowering, like I am powerful, or I am beautiful, or I don't know, whatever mantras you want to say. But in the Sanskrit, it's these sounds, these syllables, and they also mean something. But that resonance for us, it's like, it's musical. It's on a different level. It actually affects our brain waves. So great time for chanting and sound healing type things. If you have a drum, you can beat it, because of course, where the moon's actually going to be having our new moon is going to be on the 11th in Dhanista. And the drum is the symbol. And it's that steady beating rhythm of getting things done, acting in a direction that is long-term sustainable, that provides you with long-term sustainability, and that is practical, that is humble. So it's not some huge, ridiculous idea or notion, of something that you want or covet, but it's very reasonable, practical, humble in nature, and it serves the long-term purpose. And Dhanista then moves into Aquarius. So it's half in Capricorn and half in Aquarius. And when it moves into the Aquarius part, which we can see is going to happen, right away, right? Then already at 12 degrees, just the next day, the moon and the sun moved in as well. We're going to have those practical actions, those practical plans that we've sort of drummed into existence, moving to a higher stage. Like Aquarius is where we want it to serve society, where we want it to have a function and be a system that actually helps the world, or serves the world in the way that we see it, in the vision that we see it. So right off the bat, we're getting our energy sort of piled out. The 11th is the apex. It's the high point of Capricornian energy that we've been working towards since January of 2020. It's been moving in that direction. And now it's like, this is it. This is it. And it's starting today because the moon moved in. So all the planets are already there. And so this feeling, the high amount of pressure, the high amount of stakes, the very survival of it all, and the fear, and all of these different things that we've been working with, ruminating on, culminating, believing in, committing to, working towards, all these different aspects of it, is now coming to head. And it's immediately starting to pile out afterwards, even though it's a new moon cycle, setting off the energy of Capricorn on one hand, but starting to relieve us of some of the pressure right off the bat. So we see the moon and sun immediately pour into Aquarius, and by the 21st, Venus will have moved in as well. So that's, and Mercury will have ended its retrograde and will be starting to move forward from Shavana. From Shavana joined Jupiter and Saturn. So we can feel that we're at that apex of responsibility. Now, the thing that we really want to realize in all of this is that, like I said before, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you can actually do before you just break. And when you're in a state of anxiety, when you're in a state of stress, you're not actually able to accomplish that much at all, because you stop and start this thing and that thing, and it puts you in a little bit of a tizzy or a frenetic place. So one of the qualities of Capricorn that's really positive is that it is grounded in the earth. There's a lot of potential to channel something and channel your energy in one direction. One of the deities that I like to work with in these sort of Capricornian, Saturn-y times, and there's a lot actually. Kali's very, very representative of Saturn. There's Saturn himself. There's plenty of stories and myths and deities that I will share with my students when we're in a Saturn time or a Capricorn time. But one of the deities that I find the most compelling right now, just because of the concentration of energy, how high it is the goddess Dhumavati. And she's one of the Das Mahavidyas, one of the 10 wisdom goddesses. She's a tantric goddess. And there's, a lot of different elements to these goddesses that it can get very complex that I'm not going to get into at this moment. But ultimately, they're believed to bring us beyond the material world. So we're not praying to these goddesses for material things or for our life to be any specific way. We're really trying to move beyond the world with these goddesses into the higher states of consciousness. So they're deep energy. And out of all of them, Dhumavati is the one that has the most reputation of don't touch it, don't say the mantra, don't mess with her energy, because it can be very feared. But what I love about Dhumavati is that she is the crone. She's the ultimate crone. She's the ultimate old woman who has moved past worldly concerns. And so while we're understanding this in the sense of that it's higher consciousness we're working with, we're not working with our regular life. I think that what people are afraid of with her is that she's the widow, which is, one of the most ostracized things you can be in Indian society. She is unhitched to anything. And the story that I like of hers, my favorite sort of telling of her story, is that it's Parvati and Shiva in a carriage, and they're going through town, and Parvati asks Shiva, she says, "I'm hungry. Can we please stop?" And he says, just wait. We've got, and this kind of Capricorn thing, right? We've got things to do. We've got stuff to do, or maybe even since it's Shiva, I'm just meditating and I can't feed you right now, So again, some time passes and she says, Shiva, I'm hungry. Can we eat? And he says, soon, just wait a little bit longer. And she asks one more time, and he again puts her off, and she reaches over and eats him. And, whenever I tell that story in class, people sort of cheer or have this excitement of the wife eating the husband because he won't feed her. But I think that the real potent part of that is that we're taking to, because Shiva and Parvati, it's Shiva and Shakti. We have both. We're both. It's not the man and the woman. It's not a story for feminists in that way. It's a story for all of us. The part of us that is Shakti is the part of us that is alive in this world and that needs to eat. The part of us that is sitting in a carriage and adorned in our sari and meeting the world in all of its tangible material ways. And the part of us that's just consciousness that could just meditate and be totally happy, never eating, is Shiva. So they're both, and it's the activation and it's the container. And so when Shakti eats, or Parvati eats Shiva, she's taking him inside of her. And he does. He speaks from her belly and he says, you can't get rid of me that easily. I'm here, and now I'm just inside of you. And you just look like a widow out there. And sure enough, she looks up and her carriage no longer has anything pulling it. And she's just sitting there with nowhere to go. And she looks down and her skin has gotten all leathery and wrinkly, and her hair is scraggly and gray, and she's lost her beautiful gown and is now wearing rags, and her, she's just kind of matted looking and wild and lost, with this lost look in her eyes. And this is when she becomes Dhumavati. They also say Dhumavati comes about when, when any fire is put out, or the smoke from the fire is raising. She's the smoke. Doom, actually, that's what Dhumavati is the smoke. So it's what's left, right? After the fire has burned, the smoke that gets offered up as prayer. So the idea of Dhumavati is that freedom, the freedom that we seek from time. Once you reach that super old age, you kind of have only so many things that you can really worry about anymore, because your body and your mind have literally lost the capacity to keep up with all the pressure. You can't, if you're a certain age, you can't build your house anymore. You can't do this amount of work anymore. You're just physically incapable of doing it. And at some point, even your mind can go. So that quality of freedom that comes from having moved beyond the care of time, from having moved out from underneath it. And there's really only so many ways we can move out from underneath time. One is, to deeply commit ourselves to meditation and to really surrendering ourselves to the not knowing, to the fact that the one thing we do know is we will die, we will lose and shed this body. We will age, we will, all these things we know. We don't even know for sure that we'll age, because we could die young. We just know that at some point we won't be in this body anymore. So if we can accept that and lose our attachments around that, that's deep freedom. And of course, that's very few people that do that at a young age, or that do that, purposefully in their life. For most people, it happens as a result of old age. It's literally just like, oh, well, I can't, I can't do what I used to be able to do. And now I feel more freedom. And the reason Dhumavati is so powerful is because, like I said before, in Indian society, not having, for a woman to not be attached to a man anymore. So when her husband dies and she becomes a widow, and, presumably her parents might already have been passed as well, and she doesn't have anybody she's hitched to anymore. There's nothing that gives her identity, because the masculine is what gives her identity in that society. There's nothing more, cast away in society than the widow. But in a sense, it's also the most free you could ever be, because without all those obligations, without all those familial obligations, the life of a woman, is so much work. It's from the time you're, maybe 12 years old or 10 years old, you're serving, you're working, you're cleaning, you're doing this, you're making sure your family, your parents-in-law are okay, your husband's okay, this person, that person. It's just constant work. Even in high society, even if you're a wealthier person, you still have to do all these things. There's all these trappings of being that high society person. You have to entertain, or you have to smile, or you have to wear this sari, you have to show up to this event, you have to, cut this ribbon, whatever, you have to dance this dance. Everything's a have to. Everything's something you have to do. And when you become a widow and you no longer have anything you're attached to anymore, and you're not required to have a job, and you're too old to do anything, you might be cast out from society, but you're also free. You're free of all those societal obligations. You're free of all the have tos and all the have tos that come at you. You still have to eat, you still have to find a way to survive, but all those other have tos that were coming at you have now dissolved. And so that's the power in Dhumavati, and it's the power in Saturn, and it's the power in this moment right now, that the pressure is so high, that the amount of things you might have to do are so many, that at some point you have to choose. And at some point you have to decide, what are you in for you? What are you committed to because you want to be committed to it? And having the sun and moon there is very powerful for that, because there are states of consciousness. You know, the sun is our connection to consciousness. It's our connection to source, and it's our power, right? It's holding in our power, and our moon is our internal emotional self, as I said before. So when these come together in the new moon, it's Shiva and Shakti coming together, right? It's the part of us that's engaged in the world is with the sun. That's why it's a dark moon, and we feel less engaged with the world. We feel more in a meditative state and less social. As in the full moon, the reflection makes us feel more in it, more engaged, more present. So it's kind of a perfect alignment to move into that space of surrender, acceptance of some things we really cannot change, right? The acceptance that there are things we cannot do anything about. It's like the serenity prayer, you know, give me the courage to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can change, the wisdom to accept the things I cannot change, the wisdom to know the difference. I can't remember all the words of the prayer, but the idea is that you know, understand what your boundaries are, understand what your limitations are, and understand what you really need to do, what is for your survival and for your, you know, beliefs, and for your, and I could go through each of these things, for your happiness, you know, for your understanding and conceptions of the world, for your worldview and ideals and beliefs and way of having faith in this world, what you have faith in, for your hard work, commitments, and everything. For each of these things for you, what is it that you can do? What is it you can't do? And what is it that isn't really serving you and isn't helping all of that go in one direction? Because we have all the energy concentrated, we can really do that. And then, of course, the only other planet other than, you know, of course, these outer planets is Mars in his own sign of Aries, giving us the courage to change what we can, you know, to change what we have the capacity to change, giving us the discipline to do it. And, you know, that fire that we need lit so that we can face all of these fears, which are heavy. And then on top of it, you know, we have this Kalasarpa yoga, which I've touched on a little bit the last couple of videos, where all the planets are between Rahu and Ketu. And of course, right now the moon is in that too. So every month the moon moves out of the Kalasarpa yoga, sort of bringing our mind and our emotions out of it, which is important to understand, because the Kalasarpa is the time snake. It's where the nodes are holding all our energy in between them. And like a snake wraps itself around, coils itself around, and gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and has this poison, this venom that can really dilute us. That's what happens in the time snake. So when the moon is out, it's like our mind is kind of out of it. You know, we're actually a little bit free of it, because internally we're free of it. That's powerful. But when the moon is in it, and in it like this, where it's totally surrounded by all the planets and everything's right there in this one place, the outside forces that are putting pressure on us can really, it can be like a crazy python or dragon or something. Like, it can be something so delusional that we're not able to recognize it. We're not able to name it. We're not able to bring it to earth in order to handle it. And we need the power. We need the strength from Mars. We need that capacity to surrender in Saturn, to sort of release ourselves from the power of the illusion, the power that it's holding over us, and accept that we don't know. And when we sit in those meditative states is also when the nodes give us a lot more like downloads from other realms. When we're actively trying to just be engaged in the world and do everything that we need to do all the time, we don't receive that information the same way. The nodes are confusing and diluting because we're living in this world, because we're trying to make them work for us in this world. Wherever Rahu is especially somewhere that you're trying to force something to happen in your life. And of course it's transit right now. But wherever it is in your natal chart is the thing you're spend your whole life trying to do that with. That is something you're doing in the world, but yet the node itself is not of this world. They're not even actual bodies, right? They're space. They're spaces figured out in space, where when the sun and the moon move into the full and new moons, there's an eclipse at those points, at those junctures, when, for that 1.5-year cycle, and then it shifts. So that's really what the nodes are. They're almost like black holes, where the sun and, the sun and the moon's own special black holes that they go into, that they move into. So that it is an illusion. It's an optical illusion, and it's a psychological illusion because it's on our moon. And it's also an illusion of our power and our source. And so we have capacity to channel that and use the illusory quality to see beyond the confines of this material world and the time and space continuum that we're, living in. But we also have the potential to just totally live in a state of confusion and not really see the light at all. So the more we can sit with ourselves, the more we can capture this Capricornian moment in time, to not just do the work, not just do what needs to be done, but really do the work that needs to be done on surrendering, do the work that needs to be done on being still and listening, and on being alone a little bit, not like giving yourself some space from others, so that you can really tune in to what's up for you and not everybody else's energy. Maybe put aside your social media. Don't tune into that for the next few days. And I know it's hard because Valentine's Day is coming up. So for people in coupleship or whatever, there's, maybe a lot more compulsion to connect, but it's a time of, it's a time when we're sort of at a reckoning. We're at the apex of this Capricorn moment, and we need to decide for ourselves what's worthy of our time and what's not worthy of our time. And the best way to really understand from your own perspective is to tune into yourself, to sit in that meditative space, to drum your own drum, to beat your own drum, and to maybe say mantra practices and things like this that can really help you, toning or mantra or anything like that, these sounds that can help move away all the vritti, all the excess noise in your brain, so that you can really see and really hear and really be present. The nakshatra of Dhanista is ruled by the 8 vasus, who are the rays of light. They are the energy of the sun and the moon and the stars and the elements, earth, air, fire, water. And they have this capacity to raise us up and to connect us to our higher, more benefic qualities, and also to get things done, right? It's the practical reality. And the more we cut away things that are not serving us, the more we're actually going to get done. And the more our fears and everything will be absolved through the primary source of them being met head on, as opposed to all these different places we can feel fear, which is many. There's many, many places we can feel fear. So we need to really channel what it is that we need to do for ourselves, not what everyone else thinks we need to do, and do it and sit with that and release a lot of the energy. And if you do feel called to work with Dhumavati at all, if you dare, I certainly do. She, the mantra that you can say with her is Dhumavati Swaha, and offer to the fire, as the smoke travels up. That's your prayer. That's your offering that's going up to the gods, to source, to whatever you want to think of it as. But the burning and the fires of the things that are maybe not serving you right now. in your life that are taking all this excess energy from you. So I hope this is helpful. And I wish you a blessed new moon and blessed Capricornian few days here. You'll likely be somewhat productive and also maybe a little anxious, and that's okay. Lots of aloha and love to you. Namaste.